Hey everyone, welcome back to the West Virginia Cybersecurity Expo 2022. And I am here talking today with Trey Balser, who's going to talk about some ransomware horror stories. How's it going, Trey?
It's going pretty good. How are you today?
Good. I'm curious to hear all about ransomware because though I talk about it a lot in class and talk about preventative things, knock on some wood around here. I have not had to personally do triage, so I'm really curious to hear about all the things that can go wrong, and hopefully the things that can go right.
Yeah, basically, the first step or the first thing I wanted to talk about today was what exactly is ransomware on a high level. Basically, it is a form of virus or malware that gets injected into your network somewhere, and it will start running on your PC, your server, things like that, and will actually encrypt and make sure that you don't have access to any of your information or your data. It's going to look like gibberish if you try to open it up, and basically lock you out, or like a form of crypto locker. You'll also hear that way, but you lose access to all your equipment or your data and information. So that way, they want you to pay a ransom. Oftentimes, or most times, they'll leave you a note saying you can go there to this website and collect or purchase the decryption tool for a fee, and you can buy it using some type of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. So, um, I guess the first thing to know about ransomware is the first thing you want to do is learn how to prevent it. Um, Not always will companies be prepared for it, but it is a growing threat. It's getting worse and worse each day. So the best thing to do is to get your network or your infrastructure or environment ready for it. Um, some of the common ways to do that would be risk analysis, business impact, review your network, your servers and stuff, and see what all information or data that is most valuable to you. What can you consider as a loss? What kind of information needs to be protected the most, such as like health information, personally identifiable information like a social security number, credit card number, street address, things like that. Um, so those are some of the things. End user training, security awareness training. That's a really big one. So the end users are usually the front runners in any kind of environment or company. They are going to be the ones that can make it or break it. So usually they are the ones that get a phishing email come in that has an attachment. They accidentally pull it down or open it, not knowing, and that's how they invite the ransomware in.
So by default, when you're talking about like trying to do risk assessment and figure out like what information do we not want to lose, that type of thing. Um, what is someone going to do when they say this is absolutely information I don't want to lose? What they are we going to do backups? We're going to somehow isolate it from the network? Because I guess like I'm wondering, behavioral wise, some end user double clicks the wrong exe, ransomware starts, and then based on their analysis, how are they going to shut that down moving outwards because of that risk assessment they've done?
So, I mean, the best way to protect your assets is to keep it off the network, but that's not really ideal anymore in always connected environment. So the best way to protect or to begin protecting is to implement access controls such as ACLs, firewall rules, things like that. You can also do segmentation based on this host is not allowed to talk to this host, or separation of duties, not letting one administrator or one end user have more privileges than they need to complete their task. So, like, people in the marketing department doesn't need to have full admin rights for every computer in the entire company. And oftentimes that's the reason why they get compromised. They have too much, or that's why the compromise is like well spread, is because one user that was compromised had the keys to the kingdom.
So, if I were to kind of expand on this, maybe for people not as familiar, is the issue with them having admin access to multiple machines comes down to the fact that there are hidden administrative shares that anybody who's an admin can connect to every single machine off of $, and then suddenly so can this software. And not only can it affect your servers, but now it can affect all of your workstations as well.
That's correct. I mean, essentially, an end user should only have access to their PC and only certain things to that PC to complete their job. So if they have too much, it could spread to the server. And then once it's spread to the server, you have every computer connecting there. So usually that's where the centralized area is. And then it just spreads throughout the entire network there. So that's, a really big issue that some applications require certain services or processes or permission to certain folders in your hard drive that it requires you to have admin privileges or escalated privileges. So going through your application's documentation, making sure that you only give access to certain ones instead of just saying, well, I don't know how to delegate access, so I'm just going to give them the entire access to the Systems 32 folder or something like that.
Well, so I think about the fact that the end user is going to have access to their local machine. They probably won't be an admin, but they can log on and use it. And then probably somebody's going to have a file server out there. And if Turd Ferguson as a user works in marketing, he probably has access to the marketing share on the server. If he has read permissions, for example, or technically he's got to be able to save his files up there. If he has full control permissions even on that share, when that crypto locker, like when it can infect that other machine, is it infecting just that share, or is it infecting that entire machine?
It could do both. It just depends on what kind of I guess permissions or write execute permissions that it has. Usually I feel like when one PC gets compromised or a few PCs of equal level gets compromised, there's probably a cached credential of an administrator somewhere along the lines there, or that user was administrator. And then that would give them more opened up to the highway to infect more as they go. It also just depends, like sometimes not even like, I guess in the Windows environment, but if it was Linux or some type of Linux based program or device, they could be using default credentials or something of the sorts that has communication to other devices, and it just spreads from that.
Almost like being logged on as a local administrator account that has the exact same credentials all throughout your organization potentially.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see that a lot of times there will be end users that are either administrator locally of their PC, they installed bad malware or something, or if you're in a work group even and you don't have a domain, and some people have even created the same exact username and passwords on every single computer, and they've been hit by that way because they'll update the password on one computer but leave the stale credential somewhere else.
Well, that's why I thought I would imagine if people don't have a large IT staff, they probably have gone ahead and set all their workstations in a computer environment to be set up to have the exact same local administrator account and password, so that when an IT person comes in to work on it, they know what the default password is. I know there's solutions out there like Microsoft's LAPS, the local address password solution, which will go ahead and change that password periodically so that someone couldn't brute force their way in, or in this case, hopefully CryptoLocker couldn't just spread like wildfire. But yeah, that could be an issue I would think people would run into about is CryptoLocker smart enough to say this is a local account? What's the bets that this same username and password is not the same on every single workstation in my entire environment?
Yeah, and going back to the prevention aspect and implementing access controls and stuff, a really big one that I feel like needs to be more mandatory for most companies anymore is multi-factor authentication. Whether that is if you're just using remote desktop or logging into your PC every time, you have to multi-factor authenticate using either a smart token or your phone or something of the sorts, but also doing making sure that administrators have a standard user account that they use as their primary driver, and then they have the administrative account, also protected by MFA or multi-factor authentication, and use that only when they need to escalate their privileges. That way, if the administrator, which happens a lot, if they invite the bad guys in, they will be able to mitigate it a lot easier than if their full admin rights was applied. And you also don't want to use the same password for both accounts.
Yeah, that kind of defeats the purpose of having multiple accounts, I would say.
Oh yeah, you never want to reuse passwords.
Well, because there's a potential that the crypto locker program could grab its cache credentials, but like you said, that's just a password. It doesn't then have their thumbprint, their face ID. It doesn't have their smart card to go along with that. So that would at least contain it to that one machine. Is the idea?
Yeah, I mean, if someone has your credential and you log in, you have multi-factor authentication applied to that machine, it's going to ask you or notify you using a push notification saying, do you approve or deny, or is this suspicious or whatever. As long as your end user is properly trained to not hit accept, even though they're not expecting it, then yeah, it would help prevent things from running or being installed without permission.
Okay. So what can you do? What can you suggest for a normal server environment where I am sharing a marketing folder, I am sharing a sales folder, and I realize that I'm going to try to train my sales department and my marketing department to be wary of what they click on. But if they click on it, there's a potential that their machine gets infected, and then that kind of like works its way across the network over to my server. And is that gonna bring down that entire server, that file server? How can I mitigate the amount of damage I get, or hopefully completely nip it in the bud?
So basically, from those multiple departments, you would want to have them locked down using file permissions of the sorts, or using VLAN segmentation, and saying that they only have access to those drives or those shares, and nothing else. You want to do regular audits and make sure that there's no user account that somehow got more access over time and just left it that way. So that would be one way to stop it, is to just, I guess, fine tune it and make sure that you do audits and make sure that no one has more permissions. If one drive, say like the marketing drive, gets compromised, then it just depends. I guess, is the PC itself or the server that would get the files encrypted, the agent or the executable, the exe, is on the PC itself. So if they have full-blown write permissions to put on the folder, they might not have execute permissions on that server. So it wouldn't necessarily run on that server. So that could be a way to prevent it, is just to keep that like shares being read-only if they need it, or if they do have to have write permissions, apply them wisely. And then, always have backups, preferably on-premise and off-premise. So that way, if the on-premise backup gets compromised, because it's not unheard of that ransomware or a hacker comes in and goes in and like wipes out the backups. So what do? Then you can port them in from like a cloud backup or something. So, implementing some type of write protection. So if the backup appliance that you have on site starts seeing a bunch of writes, it'll know that something's not right and it'll stop writing. And then you'll only lose that little bit of chunk that it wrote to. But
Okay.
then you could, if the marketing drive got compromised, you could restore it from that, and move on. It just depends how widespread it is.
Well, because I was just trying to think about like how to contain what amounts to a regular virus.
So
And what I was thinking was, if I'm in marketing and they want me to save my files up to the marketing share, and they want me to, because they're going to back them up that night there, and they're like, Patrick, save all your files up there because we want to make sure if your workstation crashes, everything's saved to the server. I have rights to that. I could, and I need to be able to save files and overwrite files up there. So I at least have modify permissions at that point, probably. when I put those up there, if that CryptoLocker exe copies itself up there, whatever that file is, and it tries to run with my credentials, it's going to be able to run in the context of that share. So does
Mhm.
that just mean that entire that folder is what gets encrypted, or
Yeah.
do I need to worry about, like, when you were talking, I was like, holy crap, should I start to make a bunch of smaller partitions and put each of one of my shares in a different partition in case it's allowed to encrypt the entire drive? Then I've isolated it.
So if the executable was ran, so the executable is on the local PC that connects to the share. If it runs there, it's going to encrypt the files there and whatever it connects to, and it's going to use the credentials that it stole from that PC elsewhere. So if there is a domain administrator, like they're a domain administrator, then the entire server could be considered compromised. But if that user only has access to the marketing share, then theoretically that share is the only thing that would be encrypted. So then you would just restore from backups and go from there.
Okay.
Um, so, but so that kind of goes into the next thing is like, if they did get full compromised of the server, or say they have a PC that they walk in one day, they sit down and they go to log in, they see a ransom note saying that, you know, give us your money or whatever, and then we'll give you your data. Um, like, what would be the steps to mitigate that? So the first thing that you want to do is like containment is the, I guess the actual term for it, would to be contain the outbreak as much as possible. So if it's just one PC, take it off the network and make sure that it's not communicating through wireless or anything like that. If it's multiple PCs and you start seeing one by one or something like that go down, you know, some things I would recommend is to pull the power to the switches so that way the PCs can't talk to each other. Or if they are all on wireless, kill the wireless. So that way the virus, or the ransomware wouldn't spread across the other PCs. And it doesn't have to necessarily be ransomware, but it could also be like Trojans or anything that is self-replicating.
What, in your experience, what type of speed is seen at how fast that can move through an entire network? Because I definitely feel like if someone's watching this out there, we all have a lot of experience right now with with the idea of quarantining and that type of thing. So we've all quickly learned if somebody's infected, stay away from them to make sure that it doesn't spread from one person to the other. But I wonder, like, how quickly can you react? Like, how quickly do you have to react to that type of thing?
So reaction needs to be immediate. The damage is probably done by discovery. Like when you go ahead and like if I come into the office and I sit down, I see a ransomware note, I can already like assume that it's had its fair share across the entire network. Like the only way is if it like locked up in front of you mid typing, would you have enough time to maybe pull the Ethernet cable out of your computer and contain it before it spread to other computers? Because kind of like clicking on an ad that had viruses or anything, like you know how quickly those like Microsoft tech support calls take over your screen and want you to call them because you have a virus. Like you don't even have time to react or close out of the window. It's kind of like that. So like I guess it just depends on, you know, the specs of your PC, how fast it can, like your hard drive is, your how much memory you have, how fast it can communicate across the network, whether it's fast Ethernet, gigabit, things like that. But typically, like if a ransomware attack happened and you stumble onto it, it's had its time. It's probably all throughout your network if you had permissions not locked down properly.
Hmm. Okay. So, is there a possibility? I mean, I'm sure with certain Trojans and whatnot, there's signatures, but is there a possibility that an IDS, some sort of intrusion detection system, might be able to know the suspicious traffic to help you in that split second be able to shut down your ports of your switch, that type of thing? Is there a signature that's commonly out there?
So known viruses or known exploits, attacks, and stuff all have hashes or algorithms that they've already seen. Um, So that way, if they see that hash come through using an intrusion detection system, it'll automatically notify the administrator that it saw a known hash. Unless it's a 0-day exploit where it's not been recorded or in that database, or if you haven't updated the database, there's a good chance it would just sneak right by. You want to There's intrusion detection system, or IDS, and then there's intrusion prevention system, IPS. The prevention part would actually help stop at the gates if it detected that hash, but it's not necessarily foolproof. Typically, databases share, like vendors will share information on hashes like that, but you want to have a defense in depth mentality. So even though you have a firewall on your edge network, you also want to have port security, or antivirus, anti-spyware, things like that to help stop. Host firewalls are big. So the more defenses you have, the better off you are on stopping or mitigating the attack. And then if you have antivirus, or certain antivirus softwares like Cisco Secure Endpoint can actually quarantine your PC. So if it starts seeing viruses and stuff popping up because it's detected that hash or that executable file name, it'll actually stop the attack right there and hopefully prevent it from spreading.
So I mean, so based on the Cisco antivirus product, is there currently? I know there's tons of variants that are out there these days, but it does seem like people, if they're going to talk about ransomware, they bring up CryptoLocker in specifically. Is there a signature that an antivirus like that would see that would help shut it down for you really quickly?
So typically, there's so many different flavors of ransomware that it's hard to detect, and more become available each day. And where people just buy the ransomware virus and spread it. But the best way is to always keep your thing up to date, or your antivirus software or your intrusion prevention systems. Keep them up to date with the databases. If the endpoint starts to see it, or see so many writes happening, you could also set business hours on your PC and stuff, or on your antivirus to, if it starts seeing tons of writes happen, exponentially or all at once, it could potentially lock the drive or put in read only or anything, or trigger some type of security mechanism there. But that would only be if it detected the writes or the speeds of your writes. But if the hash isn't detected or hasn't been reported before, and it doesn't go crazy on write speed, then you might not be able to detect it until it's too late and you see the ransomware sitting on you.
Okay, I just knew everyone always talks about having antivirus, and it definitely plays a part these days.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going to help a 0-day, but I just didn't know if there were some signatures that were out there on CryptoLocker to where there's a possibility that it could go ahead and grab that ahead of time. So
there are databases and stuff for ransomware, and the hashes for them to help mitigate it if it's a known ransomware. And some, speaking of the decryption and stuff, or knowing that ahead of time, is there are decryption tools out there for the ransomware that's been sitting there for a while. So if they use an old version of a ransomware attack or exploit, you might be able to find, or you might be able to get lucky and find the exploit or the decryption tool online, so you can take your data and decrypt it there.
Well, I know there was, as soon as ransomware started, there was always talk of there was no guarantee if you paid the ransom that anybody was still on the other end of the line that was actually going to send you the key, because Interpol and places like that were constantly busting these rings, and so potentially you just got dealt a bad thing of cards for the fact that you were hit with something that's been out in the wild so long, you found the wrong file that's been propagating the internet for quite a while, and then when you got hit with that ransomware, even if you pay up, who's to say that those people haven't been shut down on the other end? You have no way of knowing.
Yeah, so the longer the ransomware has been out there, you can hope for the decryption tool. But if you get compromised and they want you to pay ransom, the best way is to try to restore from backups and recover as much as you can. You only want to pay, preferably you never want to pay for the ransom, but there are cases that they have had to do it because if not, they were completely at a loss for all their data and clientele. But there's no guarantee that decryption tool will work. We've had cases where like the decryption tool was purchased and they tried to use it and it just didn't decrypt the files. They've used it and tried to decrypt the tool or like the decrypt the files, but the cybersecurity team did and everyone involved started trying to use it and apply it. And turns out like the ransomware virus injected special characters into the file names, but the decryption tool didn't know how to register those special characters. So they're like, we would be able to try to, if we were able to find that, or if the decryption tool was set up like that, run a script and replace file names with, or those special characters with zeros or something. But it's not always a guarantee that decryption tool was even meant for that. They just want your money. And by the time either you decide to send them money, they might already be gone on the lam or something like that.
So when it comes to the user education, what are, in your experience and seeing it out there in the wild, what are the main delivery mechanisms that are getting people caught up here when it comes to like actually getting infected? What's the common ways they're getting infected?
So infection rates, I would say the most common for end users to bring infection into the network would be emails. It's so easy to send out a phishing attempt and fake or spoof your email address to make it look like you're an official of the actual company or anything. People use signatures in every email that they send. It wouldn't be difficult for an attacker to copy and paste that into a phishing email and say that I'm head of HR. I have your W-2 form. I saw an issue. Can you check it out and see if this is correct or something? And then that end user, if they didn't know any better and didn't look at it more thoroughly or with a magnifying glass, they would click that attachment and then just invite it in. So I would say phishing emails the most popular. It's easy and fast, and you can do phishing campaigns really quickly by sending out like tons and tons of emails to random people and hoping that one takes the bait.
Okay. Well, based on your experiences and based on people you've unfortunately seen that have gotten this, what horror stories would you have that we could learn from, or what advice based on how you remedied their machines and their networks would you have for us?
So from the small company or form factor that this could happen to anyone. You're not protected as much as most people like to think they are when they're navigating the internet. I've had issues like with one PC getting ransomware, and they didn't have servers or anything, and they kept all their files locally saved there, and it got ransomware. It's either they pay $100,000 or something crazy, which small business can't afford, or just take it as a loss and completely have to wipe their drive. So, I've worked with, a construction company one time that they had ransomware on a couple of their PCs, and I had to break the news to them where they lost all their data. They didn't have any backups. So, no recovery there at all. They just basically, we were able to put the operating system back on and activate it. But other than that, like their accounting software, any kind of like, AutoCAD, things like that, just wasn't recoverable. So big loss there, especially if that's, your company's depending on it. I've also had like entire clinics in the health field and government and stuff. And like, they would be completely compromised with ransomware or Trojans where things are spreading like crazy. They didn't do the proper response or anything like that to try to spread it or to prevent the spread. They didn't back up anything. So, one instance, not necessarily ransomware, but like we had a health clinic one time, or I was involved in a health clinic recovery where they had a Trojan infestation to all their computers there. And the only way we could take it is to shut down their computers and boot them into safe mode and run antivirus and quarantine. And basically, we had to take down the entire network for multiple days, if not weeks. So they lost all the revenue. They weren't able to help any of their like patients or anything that came into the clinic, things like that. So they lost tons of money from it. And then at the end of the day, one computer was taken home that night, and they brought it in and plugged it back in, and the entire thing spread, and they were down for another couple weeks. So it's definitely bad. So if you were to mitigate or like to try to recover from a virus infestation or ransomware or anything, make sure that it's completely contained or eradicated from your network, or you'll be sitting there doing the same thing multiple times in a row. And it's actually pretty common for them after being tested once that they get taken down again because of it.
In that particular case, I mean, I don't know how much you could have gotten them to buy into this, but would it have been possible for you to have asked them, "Hey, can we buy you some new switches and new routers, and can we start to basically kind of create a production environment and a quarantine environment as we get machines fixed and triaged? We can plug them into the healthy environment so that I know you had to bring them all down and quarantine them all and get it all wiped out, but like you could start to migrate over machines that are good to go so they could be at least working on a limited service at that case, to where in case these other machines came back up and they spread again, it didn't spread to 100% of your machines anymore. It spread to just the ones that were still infected, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which that's a really common practice. Not, I'm not sure about replacing or buying all new equipment or anything like that in terms of like network equipment.
I just
Um,
mean the fact that you probably don't have multiple switches there to create, multiple networks by default. So like if you're going to try to segment and separate, you have to multiply a couple things there to actually allow that.
Yeah. What you would do, like we've done that for a couple bigger institutions where they would have the infected side versus the corn or the clean side. And
Hmm.
we would basically build all new VLANs, subnets, things like that, lock it down by ACLs where the bad can't talk to the good, probably in a different DMZ or zone, completely. And then as things are coming back up and we know like we went around to over 100 PCs one time, or actually it was a few hundred, I think. But like we took the hard drives out and replaced them and then imaged them completely. And then um, once we knew for sure that we imaged that PC and everything, then we would change the VLAN on the switch port to bring it into the new network. And then basically just go through the whole process. Other than, that would solve the PCs, migrating them over, and then you would have to worry about rebuilding your servers or anything. Hopefully, you had backups that were good, or scorch earth, and you just build a whole new server environment elsewhere, whether that's repurposed or.
Is there anything as insidious as like if there the whole idea like back in the day we started with system restore points and oh great we can roll back, well then viruses started to be written to be like I want to infect those, so if you roll back I'm still here. When it comes to going ahead and doing the VLAN, does anything seek out trunk ports to where it's like, oh, let me find my ticket to wherever I want to go and what I want to get on type of thing?
I don't know if it like specifically reaches for trunk ports or tries to tag different VLANs. I wouldn't be opposed that it would have that capability. That's just more of like when you go to configure your network environment. Only like if you have to use a trunk port, only allow certain VLANs to be trunked through it. You don't want to have it completely opened up to all VLANs. You also don't want to use the native VLAN one or anything like. You want to use best security practices, not use the defaults or anything like that.
The same way you don't want to keep the default passwords on old Linksys routers of like username blank admin or admin, like you also don't want to use the default installation or the default VLANs, right?
Yeah, I actually had to break into a Netgear router today because it had the like it was the only DHCP server and we were trying to replace it and all the settings were in it and no one knew it. But thankfully, in this case, I was able to get into it using default credentials, but that would be bad if I was an attacker. So
I mean, I guess absolute worst case, you just get yourself a ballpoint pen or get you one of those paper clips and go to the back and you're like, I'm gonna set it all up again.
yeah, I mean, that's also another thing. Like, if you're trying to protect your network and stuff from these kind of attacks, uh, if you have a switch port or like a wall jack just sitting in like say a conference room, which there's several in this one, um, what would stop me from putting a laptop or some type of like Linksys router so I can use a rogue AP and plug into that wall jack and do what I want. So like those kind of things, you want to have security locked down where like if it detects multiple MAC addresses coming in on the port, it'll shut it down, or using port security in terms of like too many MAC or like one MAC address is allowed and no others.
Yeah, I know all about port security. It's
Yeah.
it's fun trying to teach a class with virtualization and multiple MAC addresses coming up, and maybe your port goes down for 5 minutes while it realizes, oh wait, Patrick's trying to teach something. He's not actually trying to attack the network. So yeah, sticky ports, port security,
Or if
been
they
there.
pull the entire patch panel out when you're trying to teach. No.
Yeah, yeah. Or if someone's here to replace the entire patch panel, yeah, it's going to be kind of hard to teach that day. Yeah.
But, so yeah, I mean that kind of is a couple of things about I guess horror stories and some of the best ways to prevent it or to mitigate it. But trying to think if there was anything else on that. Like I know that if your company is compromised, expect to be down for extended periods of time. Um, Depending if you're a government institution, health, or just how your company rolls, you probably pay for some form of cybersecurity insurance, or hopefully you do. If you do, you have to wait until they're engaged. So if you start to do things like that, you could void your insurance if you're a company, or they want to do their full crypto analysis on your network before you try to get rid of it. So making sure that that plan is in place, that's something that I wanted to bring up or make sure that people were aware of. Um,
I
and
think I
you,
think you were telling me off mic that you have to report this as well.
yeah, so we looked it up and made sure, but like all 50 states require some form of notification, and if personally identifiable information was compromised in a security breach. All 50, not necessarily all 50 states for government institutions, but if your company is compromised and for sure like some form of PII was released to the public or just stolen, then that person needs to be notified in some form or fashion.
And with crypto locker, it's kind of like one of those things where you actually have to prove that they didn't take it. Basically, like let's assume that they might have got something that just be cautious in that case. Like put it out there.
Yeah, most of the time, like I would say, I would be considered compromised. Like if I have ransomware on my PC or multiple PCs, I would say that whatever was on that was leaked some form or way um, to the attacker, and that's not necessarily all the time, or it might not ever happen. But trying to prove that in like public or with lawyers involved and all this stuff, you would have to have the firewall logs to prove that no connection events were made from this host at this given time during the compromise, which most of the time is difficult to prove because there's so many connection events going through your network at once. But
Okay.
yeah, if so, like you have cybersecurity insurance and you get a cybersecurity response team involved in everything. Um, it's also not a quick process. So like you're going to be down for a while because they're going to do the full crypto analysis, then they're going to do the mitigation or eradication, and then after all that is said and done, then they're going to work on trying to get business operations back to normal. So you'll probably be, if you're fully down with ransomware, you'll be down for 1 to 2 weeks at least.
So in that regards, like, because I I don't think I've actually looked into that much. Um, would that relate to the idea that you get in a car accident on the car insurance side, they want to look at the damage. They want to go ahead and assess the damage. And then often they'll say, this is the money we're going to give you, or go here and have it repaired. Is the cybersecurity insurance company going to try to come in and mitigate it because they don't want to pay out money for you? Or how's that working? Or are they bringing in a contractor to try to fix things for you?
So usually the cybersecurity insurance is a part of a cybersecurity response team. They're one and the
Okay.
same usually. Probably different legal or different departments in that company, but they're trained to help mitigate or stop attacks like that. So if you pay for this insurance, they want to see the damage. They want to see how far reached or how far it's spread throughout your network or who all is affected by it. Get a full list of everything, and then they're either going to send people on site to help you, give you the tools and stuff to help eradicate it, or help negotiate with third parties like managed service providers or ISPs and stuff to help, isolate the network, bring everything back online, and only by following their rules and their guidelines will they honor the paying for the fees and stuff involved.
Okay.
So you definitely don't want to, void it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, there's a reason you're paying for it. You're
Yeah.
expecting some help. So that's true. So kind of wrapping up here, based on what you've seen out there, number one rule is for end users, if it looks suspicious, even if it doesn't look suspicious, call someone, confirm it was actually them. Don't click on a W-2 form you're supposed to fill out or something like that, because it may not actually be a W-2 form.
Yep. So we do phishing campaigns and stuff, and they have done in-house spamming to try to see who all would take it. And we've had more people that we care to admit fail it. So it's very difficult sometimes to prove it. And if it comes from the HR director or something, you kind of start to not trust any kind of forms that they disclose to you. So I just send all my important emails like that straight to the junk folder until someone tells me I need to look at it. But
Yeah, you don't have to blame it on being lazy. You're just like, I didn't think you were the real HR person, so I
yeah,
didn't.
I've messaged our HR director a few times and be like, is this really you this time? Like, can I trust you in this one? Like, you're not going to just have me click it. You also, uh, one way that a lot of people get attacked also in phishing emails is that they will forward the email to someone asking if it's legit that has the link in the bad virus. And then they might have not clicked it, but the next person might have. That's
You mean,
also happened.
are you okay? I just want to clarify. Are you telling me that I receive an email from you?
Yep.
Okay, supposedly it's from you, and
Yeah.
I forward you the email, and I'm like, did you send me this? And you're saying in this scenario, you click
I would
on
have
the link?
clicked it. Yeah, in that scenario, there are people out there that would have clicked it, even though they knew they didn't send it.
But
So that's where end user training is the most important. They will know that it's not legit, and don't. If you have proper tools, you could have like an add-on to your Outlook that you can report phishing attempts instead of forwarding it to your IT administrator for them to click.
yeah, I feel like
That
I
has
saw
also
I
happened.
saw the other day in one of the groups I was on Facebook, something point. Someone mentioned that there was a phishing email that got through their email. They had an Outlook built-in thing, but the product was, I think, something point, and it actually made it through. I can't remember the name of it though. But I was like, huh, that was an interesting add-on. So,
Yeah.
um,
Email filters are great, but they're not foolproof. So like you definitely want to be well trained or keep a close look at any kind of email that comes in, and don't open an attachment unless you're expecting it.
yeah, wow. And apparently, if someone forwards you something back, and
Don't click your own attachment that you
you
don't
have
remember.
you have short-term memory loss, just be like, no, I don't think I sent this. Just err on the side of caution and be like, why would I have sent Trey a W-2 form? I'm not HR. Like, I'm not going to click on it.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
maybe there was that one time that I forgot, and I don't remember that well. But yeah, I try not to click emails that I sent to someone else and they send it back to me. So I'm at least safe there.
yeah. I mean, well, I mean, I shouldn't laugh, but I'm just like, seriously? Okay. I mean,
Usually you'll see it like they'll get an email and they'll forward it to like their coworker like next to them, be like, hey, did you get this? Like, this looks weird, and they'll click it, and that one's pretty common.
Yeah, that one makes more sense. But when
But
you
you don't want
forward,
to send it like forward to the same person and then get compromised. You just bad things.
yeah, yeah, you don't want to actually have to tell the response team that comes in, yeah, they said I sent this email and I knew I didn't, but I was curious, so I clicked on it.
Yeah.
No,
So
that's not how this works.
you get ransomware, and then you have to pay a high ransom or wipe all your stuff. So
Right. Fun times. I mean, you get
yeah,
a little, I guess your employees get a little mini vacation without pay, probably.
yeah,
But
probably.
yeah, furloughed.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully the IT administrator or anything wasn't involved in the thing, like, or they were the reason the place was compromised.
Don't
'Cause
worry, man. Those IT administrators, they're not going to be involved. They're going to be
they
too
become
busy
fall
sitting in
guys.
their, yeah, they're going to be in their admin office in their chairs, playing World of Warcraft online, doing a raid or something like that in Destiny. They're not
Sure.
going to be involved.
No, they won't even know about it until someone comes running into the room and crying about it.
Right. Well, Trey, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about ransomware and about things we can do to avoid it and horror stories you've heard. So hopefully we can learn from their tragic mistakes and not make the same mistake, in our case, I guess twice based on hearing it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything, and Patrick can hand out my contact information.
Sounds great. Thank you.